Welcome back to already episode number 7 of the Journey Management Playbook. We are back. My name is Mark Fontijn. I'm joined by Tingting Lin from TheyDo. And if you have landed on this video and have no clue what this is about, make sure you check out the playlist with all the episodes that we've done before. Like I said, today is episode number 7. We've been on quite a journey management journey. Quick recap. Episode number 1 was about defining a business challenge that we want to work on. Episode number 2 was about data, qualitative and quantitative data. How do we get that and use that in our journeys? Episode number 3, we used AI to create a first draft journey that was super interesting, very fast, something you can use today. Episode number 4 was about sort of validating and verifying and tagging and checking the results that AI brought forward. Episode number 5 was about the 5x12 framework of how to simplify your journey map. And episode number 6, the previous episode, was about looking into opportunities and solutions. We are all doing this to help you be more effective and impactful with your journey management efforts, to make sure that you don't spend months working on something and not making any real impact on your business and on your customers. We are at episode number 7. Tingting, it's been quite a ride. What do we have in store for today?
Exactly, that's quite a lot we have already covered. And by the way, hi everyone, this is Tingting from TheyDo. I'm very happy to be back with you today. And today, since we have covered everything about the journey content, so you might ask, oh, what's more? Well, now it is the implementation gap we're addressing. So we already have our research, we already identified opportunities, solutions. Now is the time to take action. So having all these pieces is one thing, but making them work together is your day-to-day operation, actually. And that's where the real challenge begins.
I think we are in the classic stage where you sort of have mapped, quote unquote, everything. The map looks great, but this is just still things on your screen. Now we actually need to translate those things that are on our screen into people doing other things, making different investments, moving in the direction, taking action towards the goals that we have defined. Basically, using the question, so what? We have this journey, so what? What is it that we're going to do? And you mentioned the implementation gap. Is that what you mean with the implementation gap?
Yeah, exactly. But then the keyword is really the workflow. And this is what we are going to talk about, this operational workflow that transforms your knowledge into sustainable practice.
Workflow. It's not a word that you often hear when you hear people talk about journeys. So I'm really curious to dive into that. This is, I think, going to be a very interesting episode because I feel that we're sort of moving beyond the quote unquote classic journey mapping, journey management theory, and now getting into a more, I don't know if it's interesting, a more new area, which I think a lot of us will benefit from. So how do we actually make the ideas on our map reality? How are we going to improve my business? Because that was the use case that we have adopted from episode 1. Where do we start thinking?
We start from, again, the triple diamond.
And we've talked about it before, yeah.
Yeah, we have been talking about it all the time. But then before we were talking about it from more theoretical point of view, talking about the concept, talking about the building blocks. But then today we really want to frame it around the workflow itself. When we talk about the workflow, we're not talking about creating something new from scratch, of course. We're talking about understanding the workflow that already exists in your organization, and then how we can integrate journeys and journey management into this workflow. So let's take a look at the triple diamond, actually. So When we talk about the triple diamond, we see still the problem discovery, solution discovery, and solution delivery. And inside each diamond, we go through these different building blocks. We have journeys, insights, opportunity, solution, and metrics. And now, when we talk about workflow, the question is not how the triple diamond is consisted of, but rather who is doing what and when in the whole workflow. So actually, we are asking a very practical question. So after you have done all the research with the insights, you've shown it in the journey context, and you have had a workshop with different stakeholders coming up with opportunities and solutions. They're all beautiful in the journey. And then a very practical question is, after you have done all these things on Friday, what happens on Monday morning after you've mapped the journey?
That is a really good question, which I think not a lot of people have been thinking about. So again, to be clear, when you talk about a workflow, I see a diagram that is moving from left to right. It has stages, it has sort of steps. Is this, now let me ask you again, what do you exactly mean with workflow?
With a workflow, of course, we mean continuous actions among different stakeholders, right? And it's not just one cross-sectional moment where, for example, you've had this great workshop, everyone is excited, you have a beautiful journey on the wall or in Miro, and then on Monday comes, something needs to happen. Otherwise, the map is just a great piece of art, right? So then workflow is about what should happen after the journey map, the journey has been mapped. So in this triple diamond workflow, we have these three phases as we have gone through. And then each phase has very specific input, output, and handoffs. So then it's also iterative in a way. It's not a waterfall. It's not like one-time effort. So it's continuous. You can actually start anywhere in this process. But then here's where most people would miss. This flow needs to plug into your existing organizational reality. And that's something we need to understand first before understanding how we integrate your journey management, your triple diamond into the reality.
Okay, so let's see if I understand. Let me use a metaphor and let me know if this one actually works for you. So assuming that the journey map could be seen as music that you've composed and written on a piece of paper. You have the song written out, but nobody's hearing it at that moment, right? We're just seeing the notes and we're seeing maybe the I'm not a music expert, the instruments, the tracks. But unless somebody picks up a guitar or sits behind the piano, we will not hear anything. The song will be there, but it won't impact people. Is that also what we're talking about here? We have the blueprint, we have the music, but now people need to start playing something.
Exactly. I love that metaphor. So here in the triple diamond, as you see, in problem discovery, you are composing your music, you're gathering the insights, you're analyzing pain points, and then you're defining the opportunities. And that's all great. And then in the solution discovery, you start to involve different instruments other than your core instruments, right? So the output of this phase, the problem discovery, is then prioritized as input into solution discovery. And then in the solution discovery, you have other instruments coming, other experts discussing and ideating about solutions. And then we still need to prioritize these solutions as an output of the second diamond. And then in the third diamond, it's actually become interesting. And that's where the music start to be played and you start to hearing it. And interestingly, the third diamond is where every organization usually have already in place, already some processes regarding delivery, implementation. Some organizations, for example, use the Scrum method, and some of them use the SAFe framework in the scaled agile context. And some other organizations use some different workflows, but everyone is actually delivering and implementing all the time. So then the question here is, how do I put my composed music into this concert?
Okay, again, we're coming up with this example on the fly. So if people think we have scripted everything and prepared everything, we have not. Some of these things are just really spontaneous. Now, if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is within an organization, everybody already has a way of working. HR has a way of working, IT, finance. With our music example, it might be that the singers rehearse every Monday, the drummers get together on Tuesday. I don't know, the people playing guitar do Saturday jams and they play in a bar. And what you're saying is that what we need to make sure is that we don't try to say, okay, everybody needs to get together on Wednesday and work in this specific way. No, we are going to try and see how we can leverage their existing routine, their existing practice routine, to actually make sure that the music that we have on a piece of paper gets sang, gets played. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think this is really vivid metaphor. But in organization settings, it means we don't want our journeys to disappear on a piece of paper, a mirror board, or into a slide deck. And in order to do that, we need to involve more stakeholders. We need to get them motivated, interested, see the value. So in order to do that, a very practical advice I usually give to customers is that don't try to create a parallel workflow that sits next to your existing processes. That's actually a recipe of failure. And myself, I've had that failure before. I've had this mistake also in my previous jobs, so I know how it feels. And instead, we've seen more and more success by understanding the big picture. And you need to actually ask, how does work actually get done in your organization? Don't just think from the CX service design point of view. Sometimes it's not even enough to think only from customer point of view. We also need to think, how is business functioning as a machine itself, right? And where are the key decisions made? Where are the key decision points? What are the moments? Where do we prioritize? And how do we allocate resources? These are really basic questions about business. And as a business, we might be complex inside. So it takes time to really understand the big picture if you have been working in a particular department. But then it is very rewarding and beneficial to understand this big picture, because then you can be the composer and you know where you can insert which tone and which instrument need to play where. And you can change the whole music, let's say, not radically, but little by little and continuously. And then you will find the flow much better. People are much more engaged into the new way of working, because this starts from somewhere they're familiar with and they see the value, they're willing to join the change.
Yeah, and maybe this metaphor breaks down at some point, but what I often see with journey management efforts is that, yes, we try to be the composer, we create the music, and we get stuck because, like you said, we rely on people who play an instrument. And as a composer, we don't, in this case, in a lot of organizations, don't have the leverage or the power or the decision-making positions to say we need to get together on Wednesday and start doing this. Instead, we sort of have to find ways to plug into what people are already doing and somehow find a way that they actually collaborate on this piece of music. It's interesting thinking, because I said I see a lot of people struggling with this. I struggle with this as well. So we've been working on this journey map, and we've been looking into a business challenge like reducing churn in my circle community. That's still a map, and I see that I have not been able yet to successfully or sustainably connect the map and the insights there to, like you said, the way I'm doing things, the way things are being done in, quote unquote, my mini organization. Maybe it's helpful if I actually show how things are done within my business.
I'm super curious. And I also saw on LinkedIn, you said service designers also need the skills of project management. So I think that's very, very relevant, how to connect the project management into our journey management. So please
that's a nice bridge. Yeah, journey management to project management. So I'll share my screen for a second. So we'll switch for a moment. And what I'm going to share you here and show on my screen is, I think I'm actually pretty good, or sort of good enough in project management. The way things get done inside my organization is that I have a project management tool, which is called ClickUp, but it could have been anything. It could have been Asana, it could have been Todoist, whatever works for you. I use ClickUp, and I have a lot of initiatives in my ClickUp workspace. One of the things is that I have defined growth initiatives for my community, and every quarter and every year I sort of reflect on what I think are the priorities within my business, and then based on those priorities, we define initiatives, and those initiatives get captured in a project management tool. In this case, like I said, ClickUp. People get assigned to it. Tasks get assigned to it. Due dates sometimes get assigned to this, depending on where we are. Priorities get assigned to this. And this is actually driving my day-to-day operation. This is it. Like, does that make sense, Tingting? Is this helpful?
Yeah, it is perfect. And I mean, perfect because we are seeing most of or even all organizations, big and small, are using this kind of project management tool, because everyone needs to have such a tool. Like you mentioned, someone use other tools like Jira, Azure DevOps, and so on, I've seen. But you're also experiencing what almost every other organization experiences. How do I plan my items? How do I prioritize them day to day, right? That is part of the operation. You can't run an operation without such planning.
It
then
scales.
The question is, in scale. The question is then, how does it connect to journey map, and why do we need to connect it to journey maps?
Because, like, if you look at what I'm sharing right now, there is a goal attached to these things. So I am thinking in goals, I am thinking in quarters and priorities. But what you don't see, and that is the reality, is that this is not directly linked to opportunities and solutions and goals in my journey. Exactly. That's the current reality, right? The connection is there in my head, but not in the tools that I use to drive action within my business.
Yeah. And then that might mean that it's only in your head. And when you start to collaborate with other colleagues, they couldn't see the connection. They couldn't benefit from the contexts. And how can we mitigate that, right? So what I have done is to take some of your initiatives and model them in TheyDo to show you what this kind of integration approach can look like. But before I show you that, let me talk about the key insights here. We still stay on your screen, and when we look at this list of initiatives or priorities, they are sometimes not always the same thing. Have we noticed? Some of them are opportunities or goals. Some of them are the problem statement, basically, right? And some of them are very concrete as solutions. So they are specific things you're going to build or you're going to implement. And in many situations, I see this might not be all the time the case in your ClickUp, but many times what I see in organizations, usually they are quite mixed up together in a flat list. So if we take a look at your list, in the first goal, let's say, establish a healthy discussion forum. Is it an opportunity or a solution?
Definitely a solution. Yeah.
Exactly. So have we thought about the opportunity that is driving the solution?
I would say I have thought about the goal, which is driving the solution. And probably the opportunity is there somewhere, but it's not visible and explicit in this list.
Yeah. So when we look at the goal, it looks like high level problem statement, I think.
Yep.
If you look at it, create more flexibility and strong probably connection
Well, it's
among the
strengthen the
community.
connection between members.
Yes.
Like you could frame that, by the way, as an opportunity. How can we create more flexibility and strengthen the connection between members?
Yeah. And then for this one, you probably have a lot of findings from your research material, from your interactions with your members, and then you can frame them into several problem statements, which means opportunities that you can work with to identify solutions. And if we look at if we reverse engineer it in a way, establish a healthy discussion forum, for that, probably an opportunity could be how might we provide ongoing peer support for members between live sessions, right? Because
Absolutely.
we've seen
Yeah.
silence between the live sessions,
Yeah.
lower participation, and so on. So that could be one of the opportunities under this goal.
For sure.
And then once you understand this opportunity, you can come up with multiple alternative solutions just like this. And this can be like after the prioritization and selection, we think, yes, we want to go through, we want to plan this established healthy discussion forum as our solution for the upcoming quarter, right?
Yeah.
So then in TheyDo, I could show you if
Now
I can share my
Yeah.
screen.
Now you'll need to share again.
Yes.
Now we are back in TheyDo. So for people who aren't familiar with this interface, this is one of the screens inside TheyDo.
Yes. So basically, I'm at the screen under the goals. So if you remember Mark's ClickUp view, I actually modeled this create more flexibility and strengthen connections in the community as a goal. And under a goal, you can have an opportunity solution tree, but then we recommend you first think about the opportunity. And that's why we have this here. How might we provide ongoing peer support for members between live sessions? And as you see, this goal probably can have multiple opportunities as well to prioritize. But for simplicity, we start with this one. And here, actually, we are able to open up this opportunity into the solution trees. And of course, one opportunity can also have multiple children opportunities underneath. So you will have a nice logic between the opportunities and solutions and understand the logic to prioritize certain solution in this way. We are also able to trace the statuses and the progress of the goal in this nice structure. So now we are looking at a completely same actually.
Yeah, this looks like a project management tool at the moment.
Yes.
Instead of a journey. So that is quite interesting, right?
Exactly. So we start from this because Mark has already done the planning. Mark is familiar with all these items. This is not a new proposal. This starts exactly from the operational reality, right? But if you notice this, even before we go into the journeys, when you model it in this way, you get some level of clarity. You can see why we are prioritizing these solutions. We have, of course, the planned phases. We have the statuses, which is also available in ClickUp. But then we show a little bit more logic from opportunity point of view. But that's not all. And actually, the powerful part is once you've done that, you can connect each and every item back to the journey context. And how does that look? So, for example, we have this establish a healthy discussion forum. We can then understand, okay, this is the opportunity. Well, you can see it here, but you can actually see this connection at any screen when you open up this solution. And then you can also see which...
a practical question. What would happen if I would connect this to another opportunity? How would the view look? Because now it's a tree on the left side.
So if you add another opportunity, you will also see all the connected children opportunity and solution in that opportunity.
But
so
I mean in the panel on the right, that you have opened, and then if you click on opportunities, right here you can say add opportunity.
Yes. You can actually add another opportunity because it's very important to understand we want to reduce the repeated effort, right? So we want one solution to address multiple problems without repeating themselves. So this is a very powerful way of
one. And then I'm curious what will happen on the left, because on the left I have a tree, right? So where do I see the second opportunity, reduce friction, for instance?
Well, the logic is actually from opportunities to solution. So if I add another opportunity, then the only place I can see is from the solution. I know that I'm not only solving one problem, but I'm also solving another problem. But but then the other problem might not be relevant to this goal.
Got it.
It might be relevant for another goal.
Okay.
But then when we add the other opportunity to this goal, it will appear, and it will also carry all the linked opportunity and solutions underneath.
Okay, thanks.
So now we can also unlink the opportunity.
Oh, that's a good demo as well.
Here. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, but then what's really interesting here, besides all the logic chain between the opportunities and solutions under it, well, these are also interesting. You will see how these solutions break down into multiple smaller solutions. So it's manageable, you can plan it. But then it also shows you this journey tab. That means you can see the context where this solution appears in your journey and how does this solution actually impact the experience of your customer. And you can even, without going into the journey, you can even see which journey steps from that journey this solution is actually impacting. So at a glance, you're already having certain context connecting your solution back to the customer experience. So if I click anywhere here, it will take me to the journey context. And let's see how that looks. So it actually shows me where this exact solution locates in the journey step. So here we see, okay, this solution is across connecting with peers, engaging in community, and then also facing time constraints. And then we have a little bit more context where the solution is contributing. And then if we want to understand a bit more why we are developing this solution, we can, of course, go back to see the insights and pain points across these steps to have better understanding and also having better detailed design for each solution.
I guess this is really an interesting challenge where people run into. So you manually had to, quote unquote, import the things that the activities, the initiatives that I have in ClickUp. Like we said, some people will use Jira, some people will use Asana, Basecamp, whatever. And they like that back and forward between syncing the things you have in Asana, which people will not give up, like that is, or Jira, that is their the thing that drives their work. Syncing it back to TheyDo, to your journey, that is where I guess things have the potential to break down at the moment, right?
Actually, you're right. So, first of all, we need to make it more seamless in a way that maybe through integrations, it will be a bit better for like to reduce the manual effort. For example, we already have integration with Jira and Azure DevOps. So in that case, whatever you have in Jira, you can synchronize with solutions in TheyDo. And whenever you create a solution in TheyDo, if you have two-way synchronization, you will also create certain level of ticket in those systems. So that
Exactly.
makes it
Yeah.
a little bit more seamless. However, we also see other teams finding it useful even with the manual linking in this way, because especially in the beginning, the CX team that are working with journey management would for sure need to show the value of journey management on top of the existing process. So, doing this exercise by moving the operational backlog into TheyDo is also a learning process for our service designers or CX team or whoever is working with journeys. And remember what I said in the beginning? Understanding the big picture is not an easy thing. So that's an excellent starting point. And that's also a way to have empathy with those other teams that are doing completely different
Mm.
work. So after doing this and linking these items in the journeys, we can also more easily show these other stakeholders, okay, look, what are the added value of journeys to your work? And then they will start thinking, okay, this really helped me to understand the context. And that's a huge benefit for prioritization. And later, the stakeholders will ask for more. So probably whenever they do a new round of planning, they will start to ask proactively, hey, do you have a journey to help me doing the prioritization? And afterwards, during the implementation, oh, can I get some insight from the customers in order to do a better job in my detailed design and in my backlog planning day to day? So that is incremental. And that is really the collaboration that will be natural and will continue in a healthy way.
We started our adventure in this playbook by looking at a business challenge and mapping a journey. Would you also say that we could have taken one of my growth initiatives that is in ClickUp, created this opportunity solution tree, and based on that, we would have tried to reverse engineer the journey it fits in and to sort of start adding evidence there? Would that also have been an interesting approach?
Yeah, sure. And actually, this is an approach that we recommend in the beginning. Like I said, don't try to change the process like in a disruptive way, but rather linking back these initiatives and goals and prioritized solutions into the journey. And then you can show show people what kind of value this bring to them, and people will start thinking, okay, so this is not actually taking me a lot of time, but providing me with very valuable information. And then people are motivated to work together on this, right?
And I guess the valuable information here is, like I said, every quarter I somehow come up with a list of initiatives and goals that I want to focus on. How do I know that those are the things that are important, right? And what the journey helps you to do is it gives you context. And we've said this before in previous episodes. What is the best allocation of your time, energy, resources? And then you can go back to what are the things that I need to put on my operational to-do list, right?
Exactly. And very practically, this means you need to participate with Journey into the planning sessions. And how do we do that? What I recommend is start small, as always.
That's what they always say. But what does starting small look like in this case?
In this case, it means don't start with a 2-hour session or like half-day workshop, but rather look at the existing ceremonies or sessions and try to add an agenda item, really small. It can take like 15-30 minutes, and just to review the priorities against journey context. Just like what I showed you, look at your list and ask which of these connect to customer insights from our journeys and which ones don't. And for the ones that don't connect, it should be a red flag during the discussion, right? So, not that you shouldn't do them at all, but you should ask, how do we know whether this is important? Is it based on our gut feeling? Is it because someone shouted loudest? Or do we have actual evidence? So these are then become very valuable questions in the discussion for prioritization. Because your time and resources are limited for 1 quarter, for example, if you're planning, and then you should really prioritize the most impactful solutions. The same way as doing journey management, but this is the same purpose for all the stakeholders. So that's what you can join everyone together and get the attention and thinking from them.
What I would love to know from you is, again, in my quarterly prioritization cycle, I actually have a set of criteria how to determine what gets added to the number 1 and 2 priorities. I look at why is this urgent? Why is this important? What would happen if I delay this with 3 months? Who will benefit? Who will suffer? I actually have a pretty solid list that helps me to think through which of these 50 priorities are really the top 2. How would a journey help me in that process if I already have something that sort of maybe is already working well?
Yeah. So the value of journey, I think, is to really connect all this information to the same source of truth. And it always makes sure that each decision you make is traced back to a customer reality, to the customer insights. So whatever you do is addressing a customer problem. So that is how you make your organization customer centric, right? It's not just a slogan, but then all these prioritization criterias, they are of course very, very important. And if you can align them across the different roles and different action takers or different stakeholders, let's say, it's very powerful to align your prioritization. But then Journey makes sure that you're doing it in a customer-centric way.
Right. Absolutely. So it's starting to click in my head. If I look again, my quarterly cycle, prioritization cycle, I think about my members, my customers, but there is no real structure to that. That's based on a lot of gut feeling. Like you said, I know what is important to my business, but when I would be able to use a journey map to sort of almost ensure that I'm looking and setting priorities based on the needs of my members, my customers, then it's not going to be something that happens accidentally. Then I have a real strategy to making sure that the things I'm doing are getting me closer to becoming a more customer-centric organization. Is that
Exactly.
a right way of thinking about this?
It is, but don't also think it's something daunting that
Mm.
you have to be 100% linked to customer insight right from the beginning. Because in reality, any little connection is a win. For example, the first quarter, maybe you discover 3 out of 10 priorities that clearly connected to your journey insights, and that's totally okay. You don't have to discard the rest 7, but you're aware that they're not connected to the insights. And then in this way, in the next quarter, people start asking before the meeting, can we check if this is in the journey? And then they start using the journeys more proactively. And maybe by quarter 3, you might have 7 out of 10 priorities connected to customer evidence, and so on and so on. And of course, the evolution doesn't stop here. At some point, people start to realize, hey, wait, if we want to validate this priority, maybe we need to do research first. And the research also need resources. We need to have customer insights beforehand. So we need to plan it in the quarter as part of the prioritization. So then you will have like more committed resources on the research and journey work. And then eventually the whole planning process become journey driven at some point. It doesn't need to happen right from the beginning.
Got it. I think that makes sense. I would be curious to know if there is a way to visualize, represent what the priorities would be if we would just purely look at the journey, because that list would be very interesting to compare versus what are the currently defined priorities. Is there a way to do that inside TheyDo?
Exactly. So I can show it to you. So now we are looking at a journey itself, but then the journey have different building blocks, and you can actually access insights, opportunities, solutions in a list view as well. And we think opportunities are really the bridge between the customer experience and the solution and operation reality. So prioritizing opportunities is really the key to be more customer centric and also be more aware of the prioritization. So in this view, you're actually able to switch to the matrix view and compare each opportunity in different axes. So in this view, you'll see the customer value versus business value. And then we'll see, okay, which is the opportunity with the highest value? And then how does it compare with other opportunities? You can also change the axes. But then this is a different visualization than the list view, helping you to really understand the comparison between the opportunities. And how does this happen? Actually, this is what you just mentioned, Mark. My criteria of prioritization scores. So, how do I assign values to each opportunity? So, here you are actually able to assign the customer value versus business value. And many organizations would also use an effort score to estimate what is the effort between the to address this opportunity compared to the others. And of course, if you are using different prioritization criterias, you're able to also customize it in the settings. So in this way, we make sure that all the opportunities are scored on the same criteria and dimensions, and you can compare them across the board. So, for example, if I want to compare value versus effort, then all the opportunities that have the value score and effort score will be appearing on this matrix. And then we can easily see that this is a high value, but also high effort opportunity, whereas these two have also high value, but effort is much smaller.
This overview would be very helpful if you overlay and try to see, okay, what are the priorities that the business currently has? And are they in the place where we would expect them to be, the focus where they should be? Are they even on the display here? And if they are not, that's a very interesting conversation to have. So I think this overview is amazing. One of the questions that I can imagine people have is, you showed customer value and business value. It's a slider, it's a percentage. Like anyone can fill in anything. Like how do you? What's the? I don't know. How do you make this more reliable, trustworthy, instead of somebody just filling in a random value or a value that they would like it to be?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's really about objectivity and subjectivity. And first, I have to say that subjectivity is really not avoidable. It's an illusion that we can be purely objective. And of course, nowadays, when we use AI to review the opportunities, AI will assign a customer value and business value to it according to your journey context. So it actually collects all the sentiment or the insights, data in the journey and come up with a value score. But we strongly encourage our users also to take a look at the existing prioritization framework in your organization. So usually, because everyone does prioritization, so usually every organization have an existing criteria already. So first think, is it opportunity prioritization criteria, or is it a solution prioritization criteria? Because they could be a bit different. And follow as much as possible the existing criteria, because those are tested by practice and understood by everyone. And if something is missing, for example, if you don't have a practice for opportunity yet, you can then engage with the key stakeholders and discuss the prioritization criteria and customize them in your journey management. So engage with the key people to make the decision is a key, not just to take the best practices and try to implement it everywhere.
I can also imagine that this gives you a great excuse to actually engage with those stakeholders who are setting the priorities. You could fill in random numbers and then go to the person who you think needs to set the priorities or is setting the priorities and ask them, like, are these numbers correct? Do you agree? Do you have different views? Let's like, how would you fill in the customer value and business value? And that's a very interesting conversation to engage in.
I love this. Yeah. And sometimes these differences are exactly the interesting point to discuss. For example, when you have like 5 different stakeholders in the same room trying to score opportunities, yes, I'm sure they might be differences, and because different people have different perspectives. And for example, maybe your CX lead score customer value at very high at 8, but your product lead score it as 5. And that difference tells you something. It's very valuable because it reveals the different perspectives, different understanding of the customer, right? And that's totally okay. This is a way that we learn from each other. We understand each other's perspectives, and that's what we call alignment, right? And the conversation that happens when you discuss why you score differently, like in a close off manner, That's where the real value is. You are building shared understanding.
Yeah. Ideally, you would get those people in the same room, because then you are really working end to end and looking at the experience. I can imagine that initially that is a challenge. So if you have to do one-on-one conversations with them, that can probably also work. Okay, this is, again, I think it's super powerful, this visual and the conversations that it enables. What about if priorities shift? Like, it happens for me as well. I sort of set out, I do my best to plan the next quarter, the next year, and then throughout the month, something happens. I don't know, emergency or a great opportunity that I have to act on today. How is that, like, how is that reflected in my journey? Do I have to start from scratch, or what do we do about that reality?
Well, first of all, I think it's very important to address that things change and we need to admit it. And I see some organizations in order to create, psychological safety and the rhythm of the implementation, they choose to freeze the priority during the quarter to avoid this situation. This has pros and cons, of course. But then the question is, like, if we don't adopt this kind of freezing approach, how can we be more agile in order to reflect changes in our prioritization? So first of all, we need to understand the change, right? Where is the change from? So we need to have continuous research to be reflected in the journey, so that you know what has changed from the customer point of view. Is there a new pain emerging, and how urgent it is? And it should be a living thing. It shouldn't set in stone, ideally. So let's say you prioritized based on your Q2 business goal, but in Q3 there's a shift. New competitor enters the market and new expectations from the customers. Your opportunity and solutions, if we look at the journey, they're still there, right? And but then you still have these possibilities to score them. You can change the score there. So, for example, this used to have a modest customer value and, well, a lower business value. But because of the situation of changed market, competition, and also a shift of customer expectation, the the change of customer value might be towards a more critical path. So it has a higher customer value and also a higher business value. So if we have a cadence to review our opportunities uh, based on this change, of course, this scoring change should also be based on the emerging insights. So if we have insight review, for example, every month, and that should be followed by an opportunity review according to the changes. So the researchers should explain the change to the opportunity owners, and then the opportunity owners decides to change the score. And every action should have an owner and responsible person. So not everybody should do it randomly. Then we don't know why it changed, who changed it, right? And then after those ceremonies, we can go back to the opportunity matrix again and see the change. So having a cadence, having the right stakeholder doing the right decision at the right moment is the key to reflect changes in the decision. And of course, because we know that the change of this opportunity will also impact the solutions and other opportunities linked to them, we can also then go to discuss with owners of these building blocks to make adjustments accordingly. Because everything is linked here, it's easy to trace back what has changed, what is the implication of it, what kind of action we need to take.
Yes. And I think at this moment, we are already getting pretty advanced because, like you said, this requires ongoing review. This requires ongoing research. This already shows that if you are working in this way, the journey is becoming your single source of truth, and people rely on it to set their priorities. So this is already pretty advanced, right? I guess people shouldn't adopt this as their starting point.
Yeah, exactly. So again, my advice is to start small. And here, start small means don't try to prioritize 100 opportunities in your first session, and start with perhaps one journey or even one phase of the journey. Identify the top 10 opportunities in that journey. Prioritize just these 10 and pick the top 3 for execution, which I mean ideating the solutions and implementing them and so on. So you can already show value with this focused effort, then you can expand it. And too many teams try to do everything at once, especially in the beginning. Try to map all the journeys, identify all the opportunities, build comprehensive prioritization frameworks, try to make everything perfect. It's only resulting in being overwhelmed and nothing happens. So really, start small, start focused is the key. Get your first success and showcase it to other stakeholders. That's the way to expand.
So what would your advice be to me? How would you suggest me to move forward now that you know my way of working, how work gets done, you know my journey? What would you say?
I would say, again, start with your existing quarterly planning session. And then take your existing priorities, model them as opportunities and solutions, discuss how they connect with each other and how they connect to customer insights and journeys. Prioritize based on the value and effort or any other prioritization frameworks you focus on. Just do it for 1 quarter and see how it goes. Of course, don't do it alone. Do it with all the stakeholders that need to take all the actions.
Yeah. And I guess in the beginning, this feels like additional effort. It is an investment that you need to do, and we need to set up the journey. We need to connect it to our priorities. Yes, I totally see how that might be a struggle for some, but you need to zoom out and sort of think, okay, I believe that this is the path forward, and we are willing to give this a try and move and basically invest in this, and slowly but surely build this out. But you have to put in the time and effort to move in this direction. There's just like, that's it, like, right?
Yeah, I mean, we see usually in the beginning, it is the core team, the CX team, service design team, really taking the effort to do the research, mapping the journeys, and so on. But later on, like I mentioned, maybe 3 quarters later, people realize this is such an important task and valuable task. So other stakeholders like POs, product managers, and so on, they're willing to also start to map their own journeys and do their own research. And they even can prioritize it and plan it in their quarterly tasks. So that's where you start to facilitate the whole approach as the core team rather than doing all the journey mapping by yourself. And that also means starting small is very important to make sure it's manageable in the beginning, because when it expands and when you get momentum, you will get more and more committed resources and committed people to work together with you. But in the beginning, really make it focused and small.
Tingting, I think this is a good moment to recap what we have discussed in episode number 7. There's been a lot. This was, I think, a really interesting conversation where a lot of people get stuck. We use the composer metaphor, the lone composer who's writing music but never hears it in reality. Often it feels like we're doing the same. We're coming up with a lot of insights. We're coming up with a lot of opportunities. The music on paper sounds great, but unless somebody picks up an instrument or a singer picks up a microphone, no one else will enjoy it. So that is also what we try to show in this episode. How do you actually move from that piece of paper to a performance? Maybe like a service is a performance in some sense. So how do we get to that performance? How would you recap what we have discussed today?
Sure. I think we have several key takeaways here. First of all, the workflow integration is not about creating parallel processes. It's about understanding how work actually gets done in your organization and plugging journey management into these existing workflows. And second, we need to focus on the key decision points, especially prioritization sessions like quarterly plannings, existing ceremonies, PI planning, sprint planning, and so on. These are where your journey insights need to show up and be connected. And third, use the prioritization framework that align with your organization's existing practices. And we need to adapt them to incorporate the journey insights rather than inventing something new. Balance the customer value and business value and use the framework to facilitate discussion across different perspectives, different roles, and build shared understanding. So I think these are the most important points from today's episode.
Already, yeah, really good. I would say if you've listened to this episode, go back to it once again and start from the beginning, because I think you'll hear new things. There was so much. Cool. I really enjoy how we are going on the journey management journey. Thinking, would you be able to also already give a sneak preview for what's next? Because I'm assuming there's more. We've already covered a lot, but it feels like there's still more.
Yeah. So today we talked about how to integrate your journey management workflow in your existing daily operation and in your planning session, your prioritization, and so on. And in the next episode, we need to discuss how do we know whether it works, right? How do we measure the impact? And then how do we scale and be sustainable about this practice? Because this is not one-time effort. Again, this is iterative. This is cross-functional. A lot of stakeholders need to join. The momentum needs to continue. So how does that work? How do you keep it alive over time? So these are the topics I think we can cover next time.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, because we can do this once for a quarter. We can do this once for a journey, but that's not it. Like, that's not what we are here for. That is not what we set out to do. And the real challenge becomes, once you've done it once, how do you do it the second time and the third time? And how do you scale it up? Looking forward to that episode already. Thanks a lot, Tingting, for sharing your wisdom again with us. If you have made it to the end of the episode, and if you have questions, make sure to leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify, or send Tingting or me, myself and I, a message on LinkedIn. We'll do our best to incorporate that in the coming episodes. Thanks, Tingting. It was a lot of fun, very interesting, and I'm looking forward to the next one already.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, everyone. See you next time.